Hello, welcome to the second game of the medium games finals. SSounder versus Assemble Me. SSounder won the first game as first player, so they held serve, as it were. So now it's Assemble Me's chance. It was also a tax game, which is actually a little bit worse for the first player. So nicely done there. SSounder getting thin first. Here we have trashing with Recruiter, a little bit with Necromancer and Banish. Definitely things you could work with. University is a village. It gains you a bunch of stuff. We have Draw with Royal Blacksmith Laboratory. We have Plus Buy with Fortune. Under Gladiator, obviously University can gain you things. Livery gains you a bunch of horses. Royal Carriage could be nice for various things. Probably never play with Venture. I think I would actually consider Silver Gladiator over Gladiator Poacher, but I can see arguments for both, right? You want to hit Recruiter as soon as humanly possible. You probably want to get double Recruiter and then figure out where you're going from there. Poacher, it gives you the coin, but it could draw an estate. So most likely it'll draw copper. So ideally you'll hit, you'll hit 5 twice with whatever you open. SSounder starts with the potion. I don't like that as much. I think you can get the potion on the second or third shuffle pretty easily, and your deck will be so thin from the Recruiter that you'll be able to work through it. As we see here, SSounder ends up probably missing Recruiter this shuffle. So that could be pretty bad. Although if they get the University going and they gain Recruiters, maybe they can catch up. We'll see. I assume here they'll pick up their own. Probably they've got 2 estates in hand. They may just banish 2, which is not terrible. But I'd really rather be recruiting my estates. This kingdom can kind of explode. If you can get a couple of liveries in play and then use University to gain livery or a lab or whatever, you just gain a whole bunch of horses along the way. And if you've got a couple of universities, a couple of liveries, you can really just gain tons of horses. And then once you've got all those horses, play them the next turn and do the same thing again. So if you can get a lead on that kind of stuff going. And the interesting part to me here is that University can help you gain those things faster, but Recruiter, I think, even though it's not gaining the things, it's just cycling through your deck and thinning you along the way. So with 6 here, Assemble Me takes a second Recruiter. I strongly agree. I think, again, you want to be thinning your estates, thinning your coppers. With University gains in a bit, you can start gaining labs and liveries and royal carriages and all the other little pieces that you want. Recruiter is just kind of the star of the show here. Potentially you get a big turn with those horses and you try to get a banish off, banishing 4 things at a time. Banishing 4 coppers at a time or something like that. So SSounder is getting their second 5 now. They just gained a Recruiter. Because they have the University already, maybe they want, they're considering they got a livery. It feels like they're just, the pace of that is a little bit slow, but we'll see how that goes. Some of me with a bit of an unfortunate draw, not finding Recruiters with those estates, and actually they bottom decked both their Recruiters tough. So they ended up just banishing those estates, which is probably fine. Recruiter will find food to eat. The University gains 5 cost actions. Worst comes to worst, you eat livery, you eat some horses, or recruit some horses, whatever the appropriate verb is for what Recruiters do to horses. Get them to sign papers, it looks like. So, again, SSounder here, second Recruiter makes a lot of sense. Livery makes sense. Lab makes sense. I don't think you need a ton of labs, but a couple of labs to get yourself going seem to be good. Once you get, probably Royal Blacksmith never comes into play here, but once you get one of those big turns off where you can banish a bunch of coppers, all of a sudden Royal Blacksmith ends up just looking like, plus 5 cards, no downside. But I think the horses are so plentiful that you're going to be overdrawing before you really need to spend time on banish. The Gladiators have done a very poor job of revealing unique cards. They've both had similar kind of luck with that. Assemble Me now gets to pick what they want with their livery. Lab makes, with their university, lab makes sense, again, there for the reasons I outlined earlier. Here they'll actually be able to trash Potion with their gladiator. Or, sorry, trash a gladiator with their gladiator when they reveal Potion. I think they probably want to gain one more university, but after that, I think they want to probably switch to gaining liveries and labs. I think the liveries gain you horses so quickly, and the plus buy here is limited, really limited to fortune. So they may not, if you're building to double province with the fortune or single province without, you can get there very, very quickly from where these current deck states are. And here picking up a livery makes sense because, again, they're getting a livery into play and potentially gaining 3 or 4 actions with university every turn. We'll see what they decide to do. Royal Carriage is not terrible. It does interact correctly with livery, recruiter, lab, university. It pretty much interacts correctly with all the cards you want. And like if you had a gladiator in play and you revealed a potion and trashed a gladiator, you could call the Royal Carriage again to trash again if you knew there was a reveal. And if there wasn't a reveal, then you could save it for the next turn. 4th university. I think you do need to worry here. The universities are not drawing, and the recruiters are not really drawing either. They're cycling and they're trashing. You worry about having your deck a little bit short on draw if you add all these universities. So to counteract that, you add a bunch of liveries, and then as you're gaining pieces with the universities, you're getting just a ton of free horses. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but it's only turn 9. So SSounder here can play the gladiator to reveal the university, which seems like the most likely way to hit. And it will actually hit here, revealing trashing a gladiator, and we'll be closer to fortune. It's not clear to me if SSounder wants to actually. I mean, they might wants to reveal the gladiators because Assemble Me feels a little bit ahead. So revealing the fortune seems like it's a little bit more value right now to their opponent. So you might even consider revealing a copper, and then Assemble Me might even consider not passing the copper. Although I think they end up blocking because they don't know that SSounder is going to hit 5 either way. And again, once you've got a bunch of liveries in play and recruiters and stuff, you shouldn't need to worry about villagers anymore. There'll be plenty of stuff to trash. You just play a recruiter, trash a horse or livery or something. I wonder along the way if we ever find time to banish coppers. Certainly, that's nice for the decks, but it may be that the coppers are the only payload that we have. So that's what we end up just keeping those. So I think I probably play the livery first and give up on a villager to get a couple more things in play. Get a bunch of those horses. Now, Assemble Me can actually here reveal the university and reveal the fortune, which seems like a really good pickup for them. And unfortunately, SSounder's not going to be able to hit fortune this turn, so that could be pretty important in getting a bigger lead here for Assemble Me. Either another lab or a livery, either of those seem fine. The lab only because they are a bit short on villagers. They may have to do something to trash here that less than desired. Actually, they'd probably just trash the potion. That seems fine. The potion doesn't seem like it's a ton of value here for them. Especially because they're limited to 2 buys and they've already got all these liveries, so they're going to be able to gain whatever actions they need with their existing universities. SSounder gets another lab, which makes sense. Yep, so I definitely like that, trashing the potion here. I think now you do play this livery first, just to get the horses going. So play livery, play university to gain another livery, and move on from there. They, I guess, really just want to find that fortune. They're not going to find it this turn, which is a little bit sad. Yeah, they had the Royal Carriage, but it's in the bottom couple of cards in the deck, along with a couple of horses, I think. So a little bit unfortunate here, but they'll be able to gain a bunch more horses, add a couple more engine pieces, and then hopefully next turn, I think Assembly should be able to start double provincing. So add probably another lab here. Makes sense. Lab, livery, recruiter, all of those make complete sense to me. Royal Carriage as well, if all three of those make sense. And can even consider just buying a province here, the way this game is going. The other thing I guess they can do now is they've got the gold, so they could banish 4 coppers. They've got enough payload coming from the liveries and Gladiator. Yeah, that makes sense to me. This is a spot here. I think I would banish 4 coppers, and then start double provincing next turn. SSounder is at least 1 turn away from double provincing because they need to pick up their fortune here. So a little bit sad they didn't find university, but I think they're going to be able to trash the potion as well. That makes sense. And they can decide how many liveries they want to play before the university, trading villagers for horses. I think I'd probably play at least 1. I might just consider playing them both. It's worth it for the horses, and you've got a bunch more horses that you can use to recruit next time. So because they've got a couple of liveries, they don't really need more payload here to be able to double province when they pick up the fortune. They're also going to add a gold, one assumes, when they pick up when they play their gladiator to pick up the fortune. So I think just getting themselves into a position where they can double province, starting next turn, to try to match Assembly. And Assembly has trashed 1 estate, so there is a little bit of a disadvantage that Assembly has in terms of the extra tiebreaker estate. Although I think it's going to be easier for Assembly to Dutchy dance with the current states of the deck. Let's see here. They pick up a lab, a couple horses, Royal Carriage, a couple horses, get a copper down, probably reveal the Royal Carriage with the Gladiator, and then play the somehow Assembly doesn't have any coppers to hand, which is nice. And they can get a fortune, pay off a couple debt, and hopefully be able to draw through to it next turn. So Assembly can pause at the beginning of this turn and decide if they want to gain like a lab to deck before they trigger the shuffle. They either did not consider that, or they considered it and decided they didn't want to do it. They'd rather play the university with a livery in play. Makes sense. It's just something you want to make sure you're considering. And obviously they had a lot of time between the turns to consider that. So one assumes that they worked out that they wanted to play the horses first. Here I assume they're thinking about playing the recruiter before the horse to trash a horse. I think you need to make sure you draw here. So probably play the poacher first, then play the horse, and then sort of reassess. You do need to make sure you draw through the deck here and get to 16 money. Get some of those liveries to gain the horses back. Okay, Royal Carriaging the lab makes quite a bit of sense, I think. You can't Royal Carriage on horses, and non-terminal, so it gives you the extra plus action. So you can, if need be, recruit coppers and not have to worry about it, or get deliveries in play before you start gaining things with universities. This should probably be trash copper here, and then look to trash a horse. They did go with the poacher. That makes sense. The poacher is probably going to be really bad. They're probably going to have to start discarding next turn here. Okay, so here they can actually trash a horse because they're able to draw through. They go for a copper that lets them save horses, or it lets them gain and play liveries. So they do something like university livery, university livery, university lab, and then seed their next shuffle with a bunch of universities and labs right at the top. So to say that a little bit slower: university gain lab, then livery, then university to gain lab and horse, then livery, then university to gain probably just like Royal Carriage and 2 horses, and then play a lab, and at the top of your deck will be a bunch of those labs and horses. Should be quite nice. Yeah, so they ended up doing a similar line, it looks like. I'm not sure if they're going to trigger quite as good of a shuffle as the way I described it, but it'll probably be sufficient here. And then they can play Gladiator. They don't even need to really play the Gladiator. They can just play their treasures and buy 2 provinces. And again, here I would just pick up 2 labs. Seems sufficient, and leave the Royal Carriage down for safety for next turn. Not sure why they played that horse. I think there was really no reason. They wanted to get the livery into play. That seems a little bit like they're spinning their wheels here. Unless they're going for a triple fortune line, or a double fortune line, where they get another fortune here. But they already have enough money with the number of liveries and fortune that they have to buy 3 provinces. So I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure what their plan is. So playing the livery, they're Royal Carriaging it. This feels like they think they have more buys than they have. I'm not quite understanding what they're doing here. They have 48 money and 2 buys. So at best they could buy 2 provinces. It does get them a couple of extra horses, but I'm not quite sure that all that spinning was worth it. The line I originally outlined, I think, ends up with them having 2 labs and 2 or 3 horses on top of the deck. Either way, they're in a pretty commanding position. Obviously, if there was like a workers' village or something, traveling fair here, they could just buy a bunch of provinces. But I think I see no reason here not to click on a second province. They've added 10 horses to the deck. They'll easily draw next turn. And once they see SSounder has dudded here, I assume SSounder didn't even resign after Assemble Me kicks off next turn. But yeah, picking up another fortune here isn't crazy either. It's fortune and gold, so they gain 10 horses, and it gives them 3 buys, and enables them to do things like triple province or double province duchy. And SSounder's got to then pick up another fortune if they want to contest that. So that's not crazy either. It also empties the horse pile for whatever that's worth if they pick up fortune here. Which I know SSounder has a lot of horses in their shuffle too, but it's nice to be able to empty the horse pile. That's a good feeling. It's either the spectator to think this is not that critical of a moment because we're looking at SSounder's hand. Assemble Me probably didn't track SSounder's deck super closely, and it's tough with the number of actions and universities and stuff. Doesn't realize that SSounder's going to have a dud next turn, so they're thinking they need to make the right buy here. And if they make the right buy here, they can basically seal victory, and if they make the wrong buy, they let SSounder back into the game. So certainly it's worth considering. Province and Fortune are the only two, I think, reasonable things at this point of the game. Both, I think, have, sort of 99% probabilities of winning the game from this current game state, seeing what I'm seeing. But knowing that SSounder could double Province next turn, that they have that extra estate, some of them may want to get the Fortune here, which lets them triple Province, and then SSounder's got to follow with a Fortune, and that potentially then Assembly gets the last Fortune and then just has that extra plus buy, which is going to be key. Key here, I think. Although you can do the math and work out if you trade double Province Fortune and then SSounder does double Province Fortune next turn and then triple Province. There's complications here that make it difficult. So SSounder doesn't have a lot they do. I think they just play Royal Carriage, University, a lab, and pay 2 debt. I don't really see any need to Royal Carriage the University, save it for next turn in case you can make more use of it. Maybe just gain lab livery or lab carriage. Yeah, so Assemble Me gets the good news here. So obviously play the Royal Carriage first, play the horse. Yeah, so this is the line that I suggested versus the line that Assemble Me took. You end up with fewer horses in deck, but you've got like 4 of them on top. Again, this is perfectly fine for Assemble Me. They're still going to win the game the way this is going. They just play 2 liveries and buy a Province, and they're in perfect shape because they've got huge amounts of horses in the rest of the deck. It just makes SSounder feel like they've got a little bit of a chance. But all they can do is buy 2 provinces twice, which gets them to 27. And Assemble Me can buy 2 provinces and Province Duchy. So that was really, I think, given the number of horses that Assemble Me has, a quite unlucky draw. But happens sometimes in Dominion. It looks like SSounder is going to play through this. They should have enough horses in the remainder of this deck to find stuff. They may need to slightly balance which terminals they play based on that. Although I think they've got enough horses that they can recruit a horse or 2, and it should work out. Yeah, and they've got more than enough money for double Province here. I think they'll probably even hit 24 money if they wanted to Province Fortune. Unfortunately, I think the Province Fortune line doesn't work when you're down 3 provinces in this spot. They also need to be careful. It's possible Assemble Me can pile labs, liveries, and Royal Carriages next turn, depending on what SSounder picks up with their own universities here. That's just something to watch out for. The other thing Assemble Me can do is gain. This is a little bit fancy, but while SSounder is playing this out, Assemble Me can gain a Necromancer and a Poacher with their university if they draw deck. They can play the Poacher to discard a province, and then they can Zombie Mason it. Is that the correct zombie? Zombie Mason it into a province and mill provinces. And they should have enough. They should have enough payload and enough draw that they can actually do that next turn, so they could get double province and mill a province next turn with all the horses that they have. I'm not quite sure what I want to be recruiting here as SSounder. I think I want to be recruiting. Yeah, Gladiator is no longer a good card for this deck. You have more than enough money to double and do anything you need. So recruiting a Gladiator makes sense. You can Zombie Mason a Fortune into a Fortune, right? So that gives you a gold and a whole bunch of horses. Like there's tricks like that you can do. Probably those are not necessary for Assembly at this point in the game, but you can at least think about them. They're fun to work out, and in a different game play out of this, they could come into importance. We're taking the last lab. So the piles are getting quite low. I think Assembly has 3 universities and 2 buys. They've only got 5 total gains, unless they do the Necromancer stuff that I talked about, which would be fun. They can actually gain 2 Necromancers because there's a poacher in the trash. And SSounder can do similar tricks, but unfortunately, and I guess your last turn you could mill a fortune into a province or something, but because fortune's the only plus buy, that doesn't really seem to work. Right, you gain 1 Necromancer and use a Royal Carriage. Good point, Cirrus. Yeah, that makes it even easier to mill a province. And again, if Assembly doubles next turn anyways, which SSounder I think should know that they will because they had such a dud turn last turn, then they're at 32 VP, and there's really nothing SSounder can do. So we'll see here if they just go for double or if they go for province fortune. Problem is the game ends in 2 turns, and they're exchanging a fortune. They're exchanging a province now for a province next turn fortune. Obviously, if the game went a few more turns, then they have more chances to use that plus buy. But the game will be over in 2 turns. We do see here that the horse pile is low, so SSounder is going to miss out on at least 1 horse, depending on what they buy, due to Assembly having so many. The horse pile does not count towards a 3 pile ending, for what that's worth. I'm not, yeah. Honestly, at this point, it doesn't make a huge difference which decision SSounder makes. Assembly ends this next turn with 32 VP, unless they do tricks like I mentioned with Necromancer and Zombie Mason. That's just a general thing here. You should play all but one of your laboratories before you play horses. Yeah, I mean, they're going to end up playing most of those horses anyways, but you should play all but one of the laboratories before you play any horses. And then decide once you're down to 1 laboratory. As obviously you may want to Royal Carriage labs, although I don't see a huge need for that here. And again, we see how just immensely Assembly is overdrawing. Now is a great time, University, for that Necro. Get it into the deck. Get ready for those tricks. You can even play a recruiter, probably trash the other recruiter. Save yourself a bunch of horses for next turn. Play your liveries. University, some Royal Carriages. Get the Royal Carriages down on the mat. Top deck a bunch of horses. Buy 2 provinces. Seems like a good turn. Again, if you're also following, I really want that Necromancer Royal Carriage it, play the poacher to discard a province, and then mill a province, and then SSounder's, only got 1 province in the pile and down, 23 victory points. Did not trigger the shuffle though. That's didn't trigger the shuffle, but had a 3 pile ending, so it didn't matter. So nicely spotted there by Assembly, and good game for them. I'm going to take a quick break and join the chat again at the beginning of game 3.